Speaker. People will ask whether this is an act of gross gerrymandering and political opportunism or an act of gross incompetence and stupidity. I can inform the House it is both. And there is no mandate for this, nothing in their manifesto. This is an imposition from Whitehall. And if the government was so proud of this work, why did they try and sneak it out in a written ministerial statement and then be dragged to the dispatch box to justify their decisions? I, unlike the Honourable Lady, have spoken to local government leaders in the areas affected. They were presented with a plan and told to comply. The outcome was predetermined. This is a stitch-up. Labour, redrawing boundaries from the centre, overriding local identity and local consent to maximise party political advantage. And the government, Mr. Speaker, has announced £63 million for this transformation. Yet it turns out that is the same £63 million that they've already committed to deal with the consequence of their botched attempt to cancel local elections. So how can they now claim that is going to refund wholesale reorganisation? The government is telling well-run councils to subsidise poorly run councils. Money that should be filling potholes, actually filling black holes. Resources that should be for collecting waste and supporting vulnerable residents instead will be diverted into restructuring and bureaucracy. Estimates point to a borrowing requirement because of these changes running into the hundreds of millions of pounds, potentially approaching £1 billion, all to fund their vanity project. And the cost will fall on local people. So, some questions. How can she claim this to be local-led when it is imposed on communities? Why are ministers determining these boundaries rather than the Independent Boundary Commission? What estimates will be made of the total borrowing requirement? How much money has been set aside for the inevitable judicial reviews that will flood out after this announcement? Mr. Speaker, this is not reform, this is vandalism. It is not empowerment, it is imposition, and it is local people who will pay the price for this government's incompetence and arrogance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, nobody could accuse the right honourable gentleman of not saying what he really thinks about this proposal, so I'm glad that he's had the opportunity to do that. He asks about proposals being locally led, and of course, these proposals have all been put forward by the areas that they affect. And residents and others have had their chance to feed into the consultation, and we weighed those consultation responses alongside other factors that he will be aware of, and he mentioned some of them, including finances. He asks about the Boundary Commission. Officials have engaged with the Boundary Commission extensively, and I have met them myself to talk through the process, and I'm confident that they have the ability to do the work that they need to do to make this process a success. And finally, on finances, Mr. Speaker, having spent the past 6 months or so, day after day after day, listening to councils with deficits caused by a failure on SEND, a failure on children's care, a failure on adult social care, a failure that was presided over by a government of which the right honourable gentleman was an active part, I would be cautious, if I was him, lecturing other people about council borrowing.
Just to let people know, there are normally front benches wouldn't speak on this particular issue because it affects their constituency and they've got a direct involvement. There is dispensation today. Just to say, let's start with Steve Race.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the government's move to reorganisation that will benefit cities such as Exeter. The Minister may, though, have seen yesterday official communications from Devon County Council, which said that reorganisation will put the lives of vulnerable people at risk. Now, notwithstanding the fact that children's services and SEND services in Devon have been failing per officer for many, many years, does the Minister agree with me that this is irresponsible? It's not true. And should reorganisation happen in Devon, as I hope it does, it will be up to those authorities to make sure that services are safely and effectively moved to new structures.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I agree wholeheartedly with my honourable friend I've been working very closely with the Minister for Children's Care and with other ministers in DfE to improve our children's services. We will make sure that we do that through this reorganisation process. Nothing matters more than the fortunes of our kids, and it's up to us in central government and local government to work together to deliver good childhoods for all of them.
Zoe Franklin, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is deeply disappointing that this matter is being addressed through an urgent question rather than it being through a proper statement from the government yesterday. Exactly. As I have said before, the Liberal Democrats support devolution and reorganisation where they strengthen communities, but changes must be locally led, properly consulted on, adequately funded and never top-down. And in recent months, I've spoken with local government leaders across the country, and their message is really clear and consistent. First, trust us. Second, work with us to fix the broken local government funding system, which is leaving councils struggling to meet rising costs and needs. So while the decisions announced for Essex, Hampshire, Norfolk and Suffolk provide clarity, even if areas remain concerned about viability and sustainability, they fail to address these fundamental issues. And in Sussex, the government has essentially said that local proposals, they dismissed them and they've instead chosen to consult on their own plans, leaving the county in another period of uncertainty. Does the Minister recognise that this approach undermines trust between national and local government? Has her department fully assessed the financial consequences of reorganisation proposals in these areas and across the country? And will she commit to a cross-party piece of work with local leaders, I note, to create a fair, adequate and long-term funding settlement for councils?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Lady for her the points that she's made there. Just on the process for announcing it, we followed the precedent set by the previous round of reorganisation in 2021, as it happened under the previous government. In relation to Sussex, it's really important that we get this right. We had concerns about proposals not sufficiently addressing the criteria, particularly on economic growth, service disaggregation, community identity and financial sustainability. And we will work quickly now with Sussex so that we can enter into that period of intense discussion and consultation after the local elections. It won't affect the overall timings of the programme, though, and for new unitaries to go live in 2028. And she also mentions about working with local government on the overall finances. Having just dealt with the Fair Funding Review, Mr. Speaker, I can honestly say that I've spent most of my life over the recent months since I've been appointed, along with members right across this House, actually, talking in detail about financial sustainability for councils. And I've no doubt that she and I will engage on it many times in the future.
Ms. Swallow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I genuinely welcome my honourable friend stressing the need for locally led decision making? She'll know that there is widespread support for a foundation strategic authority for Berkshire, Oxfordshire and Swindon across the Thames Valley, and that a bid is currently with her ministerial colleagues on that line at the moment. She'll also know there is genuine concern that a different proposal, wholly unacceptable to local leaders, is being mooted. So could she take this opportunity just to reassure me and colleagues across the House that when it comes to FSAs, MSAs, SDSs or any initialism she so chooses, there will always be that priority of local-led decision-making?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my friend for making his way through the alphabet soup of devolution there. I'll make sure that the Minister for Devolution hears his points. She will have read his letter and I'm sure will respond to it. That's the next stage of our plans to make sure that all places in this country have a plan for growth